in the industry who had just started a measurement business. And so 25 and a bit years ago, I moved from PR into measurement and evaluation. And I've had an incredible career as a result, where I've run basically all of the world's biggest monitoring and evaluation companies. Grown one from a startup into the world's biggest, which we sold, then became part of the Gorkana Group, which is now part of Cision, which obviously we sold, then became part of Prime Research, which I helped the owner bring that to a point where it was sold to Cision. And the first message I'd say to all of you as PR people is I feel your pain about measurement. I am, think of me as a PR and comms pro and not as a measurement professional. My dirty secret is that I cannot use Excel. So I've told you that up front, okay? And I'm not joking either. I cannot build a chart in Excel. And yet I have spent 25 years running the world's biggest measurement businesses. So you don't have to be able to be a sort of data wonk. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that PR and comms professionals have. We sort of recoil away from measurement because we worry about it's going to be too complicated. I've made my career by making what seems to be the impenetrable understandable. And that's what I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do for you today. So today I am the global co-managing partner of a business called Karma International. That's what, sorry, this is the problem with Teams, you see. This is my colleague phoning me. Can you hear my phone ringing? This is Teams calling me while I'm presenting. It's crazy, isn't it? How do I get rid of that? Excuse me one sec. I'll just say. So I can't go on private and stop her from contacting me. Okay, apologies for that. Yeah, so I'm the global co-managing partner at Karma International, but I'm also chairman of AMEC, and I have been for 6 years. And AMEC is absolutely in my heart. So that's some sort of background, if you like. Rob said we have up to an hour. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, we got to 1 o'clock, so.
Fine. What I'd suggest that we do is we, sorry, what, do you need to let more people in? Rabia's saying she's in the waiting room and she's waiting to come in. And I think you've got a colleague waiting to come in. Have we got people waiting to come in?
Carry on. I'm just looking. Yeah, I can just go through.
What I'd like to do when I'm talking, anyway, I'm going to get my deck out. But don't see this as a one-way download from me to you guys. Please, if you've got challenges or questions or something you don't understand, let's just have a conversation about it as we go. So on that note, I'm going to now share my screen, and with a bit of luck, everybody can see my screen. I now can't see you guys, but I can see my screen. Do you all see my screen?
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so I've mentioned I'm the global co-managing partner of Karma. Karma is the global media monitoring and evaluation business. I'm the chairman of AMEC, bottom right. I'm not going to be selling you Karma's services today. I'm going to be talking about industry best practice, so the AMEC perspective. And obviously, I'm talking to you guys around the world, and you're all part of Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry's network, Convoy. So the topics that I want to cover today. So what I'd like you to get out of today is, okay, it's still messaging me, Rob, flashing up messages saying that people are in the lobby.
I can't seem to, for some reason,
disconcerting.
get them.
No one in the lobby. Ask people try to rejoin. This is a common problem on Teams.
Okay.
Ask them to try to rejoin.
Yeah, there's no one waiting in the lobby, so.
Hi, sorry, I'm in now. It was me waiting.
That's Rabia. Okay. Good.
Hi.
Welcome, Rabia. Hi. But it was Robert was messaging me, telling me that other people from your group were trying to get in. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to ignore any messages coming at me because it must be very frustrating for you all. So apologies for that. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, we are going to talk about how critical it is that PR focuses now on the importance of meaningful measurement. I think there's a real threat, which I'm going to talk about today, that somehow it can be outsourced and the thinking can be left to agencies to do for you. And with the age of accountability, the economic crisis that we're in, that isn't going to work any longer. And it's a big wake-up call, I think, to the PR and comms community. And to measure in a meaningful way, we've got to move beyond just reporting these big numbers. I talked about when I was at Saatchi's PR firm and was just producing reports and it had these big numbers and how I got caught out. We've got to start focusing on how do we measure what matters. We've got to be able to show our clients that we're not just busy fools. We're not just doing activity for the sake of activity or because they want us just to do stuff, but that we're doing stuff that has actual proper value, because it's only stuff that has value that organizations are going to pay for when budgets are tight, which of course they're going to be as this wretched pandemic continues. So on that basis, I'm going to talk about the best practice educational resources which all of you around the world can use for free to educate yourselves, to improve your thinking, to improve your clients' thinking, and to base the Convoy Group's measurement best practice around. And the final thing I'm going to talk about are just some immediate considerations that I think you should think about when we go away. So that's what I'm going to cover. And on that note, I'm going to crack on. So the first thing, obviously, is to talk about the current state. The world has changed beyond any of our sort of belief and understanding in the last 18 months. And obviously I can't see anyone now, but I should have said this when I could see you. But I mean, I hope everybody is safe and well, and your family and your friends, and getting through what is just been a terrible 18 months for everybody. And I could see from before, you know, we're all stuck at home. You know, how difficult it is. But this pandemic has created huge uncertainty in all organizations around the world. And we seem to be ebbing and flowing in terms of positive news. And then, you know, it seems like the vaccines are going to do the job. And then, you know, the latest is, well, this Delta variant, you can still catch it. Even if you've had vaccine, you can still get very ill. You can still pass it on. You know, and the news all seems sort of worse again. And certainly in our part of the world, in the UK, there are parts of the UK where the numbers are doubling on a week-on-week basis again, even though we're privileged to be one of the most highly vaccinated countries in the world. So this ongoing uncertainty, coupled, frankly, with some leadership questions, I think, by some governments, is causing uncertainty in organizations' minds. Organizations don't like uncertainty. How do CFOs behave in uncertain economic situations? Their role is to continue their organization's success, and they do that by preserving cash. They have to have the cash to allow the business or the organization to continue to succeed. That means that all these CFOs all around the world are sitting over every budget item at the moment with a red pen, looking to cut out anything that is just a cost. Anything that is a cost without having a demonstrable business or organizational value is going to get called into question. A cost center without benefit will be deleted. And if PR can't show that it produces proper organizational objective related benefit, it faces a perfect storm. It has to not just show that it is doing stuff, it's not being a busy fool, that it is doing stuff that matters to the organization. So it's turning dials that the organization actually cares about. Now, too much measurement that we do today in PR is activity focused measurement. It's counting the things that are easy to count. It's counting big numbers, numbers of articles, volumes of impressions, how many tweets, shares, likes, how many retweets, engagement. None of these metrics really matter to an organization. What matters to the organization is that we are helping them to promote their cause, drive awareness, affinity, propensity to recommend. On the red lorry, yellow lorry, and the Convoy website, there was a lot of talk about driving people down the sales funnel. And of course, you know, not that many PR professionals and comms professionals even today are talking about proper sales support as you guys are. But of course, you know, sales is the lifeblood of most organizations, certainly most businesses. And so supporting them with their sales. Now we have to therefore link our comms work right through to showing how we've created value for the organization by supporting those sales. And that is more than just activity driven metrics. And I think to explain this, I want to talk about three broad words that we use in the measurement industry and what they really mean so that we can all be on the same page. We talk about outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. And I'm going to explain very simply what each is. So if we start with outputs, outputs is the content that we generate. In the old days, it was about paper-based newspapers. You know, when I was working in PR, we got envelopes from media monitoring companies, and I was a junior at the agency, and I'd sort of shake this big brown envelope every day, and all these paper clips would come fluttering out. Of course, now outputs are digital content, they're broadcast content, social media content. It's anything that is content generated stuff. And of course, it might be your owned media as well. The days of, you know, PR and comms being largely focused around just earned media and media relations are behind us. We have to be able to operate across paid and owned and shared media as well as earned. So any of that stuff that we generate is what we call outputs. That output stuff is generated as a result of our work. That's the stuff. But what we need to help our clients to understand is how we've then shaped the things that matter to the client. So the next thing is, once I've had some stuff and I've seen it, I've read it, I've watched it, I've heard it, what does our target audience now think? So this lady in the middle here, what does she now think, having seen, heard, watched any of this content, any of these outputs that we have generated? And that's what we call the outtakes. Does she have a better awareness of the organization? Is she more likely to recommend it? Is she more likely to go and seek information out on the website? Is she, if you're representing a car company, is she going to go and fill in a car configuration guide and begin that journey down the sales funnel? So that's the outtakes. What do people now think? And you think as a result of what you've seen, read, or heard. So the outputs first, the outtakes, what do we now think? And then finally, the outcomes. So have they bought the car? Have they attended the event? Are they recommending us? What is the net promoter score? Is that going up? Whatever it might be, those actual tangible things that we're being asked to support. And the reason we face a perfect storm in PR and comms is that the measurement that you are being bombarded with at the moment by multiple vendors around the world is all focused at this stuff on the left, the outputs, these content metrics. And that's because venture capital, private equity has come flooding into this market. It sees data and insights, as they call it, as the new oil, and they love to build platforms and tools because these things are called software as a service. You build it once, that has an upfront cost, but you then sell it many times, and you sell the same tool to multiple different clients. And once you start doing that, you create basically a license to print money, and you get massive margins. And that is why you will have seen that many companies like Cision have got these outrageous valuations. I don't know if you're aware, Cision's latest valuation is something like $2.5 billion. And this is for effectively a company that monitors some media and does some automated charting around it. There's this sort of overheated market, if you like, going on around these software as a service tools. The problem is they're all counting the stuff that's easy to count, but they're not measuring the stuff that matters, the stuff that your client cares about. You're going to make your client look great if you can help them drive changes in the middle section and the right-hand side section, the outtakes and the outcomes. Every organization cares about this stuff in the middle and the end. Nobody cares about your activity. Now, I talked about my early jobs. My very first job when I fell out of university was selling advertising space in magazines. On the telephone, and the metric of success for a telesalesperson, if you think about it, is not the number of phone calls that you make. The metric of success is, let's say Convoy appointed a salesperson. You wouldn't say, well, this person's great, they've made 100 phone calls every day, but you know what, they haven't won us any new clients. The thing that you care about is, have they informed your target audience that the Convoy group is great, and have they helped you to win some pitches, the outtakes and the outcomes. So it's the same thing here with PR. We can't just count the outputs. We have to measure what matters, where the organizations care, where the dollars are. So these tools that are proliferating and that have millions of salespeople that are bombarding you with sales calls every day have this fundamental flaw. And that, coupled with two other things that I think are a challenge to PR, is creating this this perfect storm. Problem number two is something that the head of UK government communications, a gentleman called Alex Aitken, once described to me as SOS. And what he means by SOS is, he said to me, PR's big problem that I see all around UK government communications and right throughout the industry is that we just get too busy and we just do stuff for the sake of stuff. We send out stuff. And Alex can be quite punchy with his language. And when he's particularly punchy, he says, they're just sending out shit. They're just doing stuff without stopping to think, what is the reason that I am doing this work? What are the objectives of the organization that I'm trying to achieve? What are the outcomes that I'm trying to do? And instead, and I mentioned I'm an ex-PR pro, and I understand it. We get involved in doing activity, and we do activity for the sake of activity sake. We do SOS, and we don't take a chance to stop and think and rewind and plan. And I remember being at a very senior CIPR meeting. It had the Chatham House rule, which is where you can't sort of repeat who said what. And there was a number of very senior in-house PR comms leaders at this meeting. And I remember this was about 8 years ago. The scales came off my eyes when this very senior lady said to me, you see, Richard, the problem in PR, our biggest dirty secret is that we don't plan properly. And because we don't plan, we just do stuff. And if we're not planning, how do we know if what we're doing really matters? And it just, it struck me that this is the key that unlocks everything about the next problem, which is that PR professionals and comms professionals too frequently just don't like to engage in PR measurement, comms measurement stuff, because the dog ate my homework. It looks too difficult. It's not my thing. I'm a communicator. I'm a PR pro. I'm not an Excel guru. I can't do data. That's someone else's problem. So we sort of withdraw from it. And I said to you right at the beginning, you know, that's what I was doing as well. And over the 25 years I've worked in measurement and evaluation, I've heard every reason why people say that they're not going to spend the time to think about improving their measurement and evaluation. And it ranges, you know, I've heard them all, and I've listed some of them here on the right. There's no need in my organization. Well, of course there's a need. If you're not measuring what you're doing, how can you know whether it's any good? There's no demand, there's no buy-in. It's too difficult, it's too complicated, or there's too many lacks, you know, there's no standards in the industry. I don't have the time, it's too expensive, oh, it's too cheap and cheerful, it's too simplistic. Oh, well, don't you understand, I can't influence my organization's objectives with our PR and comms work. Oh, the advertising value equivalents that we're currently getting, they suffice. We don't need to do anything more sophisticated. And actually, the honest people often say, well, it's because I fear the results. And that PR professional that I was 25 years ago, I was one of them. I feared the results because I didn't engage with measurement and evaluation up front. It became this big scary number that sort of appeared at the end of campaigns or the end of a monthly or quarterly cycle, and I was scared of it. Whereas if you embrace it and think about it up front and make it part of your plan, actually that fear goes away. And I'm here to say to you today that all of this has got to stop. If Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, the Convoy group is going to live up to the brand ideals that it promotes on its website, if it's going to flourish and succeed in this age of accountability that we live in today, we have to sharpen our measurement and our evaluation, and we have to lean in and make sure we understand it. And the great news is that if I can do it, I promise you that you can as well. And I'm going to now move beyond the sort of challenges to talk about, well, look, what do we need to do? What do we need to be thinking about? So I hope everyone's with me so far. This is making sense. I'm going to talk a little bit now about AMEC, this trade association. So AMEC was founded 25 years ago, about the same time that I moved into measurement and evaluation. And my first business was one of the first members of AMEC. Now, my first business only had 2 or 3 members of staff. I was actually employee number 2. And the founder of the company, my business partner at the time, a chap called Mark, it was Mark that wanted us to join AMEC. And I said to him, I don't think we should. Why should we help our competitors to be better? Why would I want to tell my competitors about better ways to measure and some of the approaches that we're finding are working and how we do it? And Mark said to me, well, Richard, a rising tide lifts all ships. Is everyone okay? I heard a voice. Are we all good? Yeah, I'll carry on. A rising tide lifts all ships. And that's my gratuitous excuse to show you a nice picture of the south coast of Britain at Chichester Harbour, where this is low tide. You can see the boats are sitting there on the mud flats. And as the tide comes in, all of these boats will lift. And Mark said if the market can be educated, if we can have some consistent and common approaches amongst the competitor set that the market can adopt, it's in everyone's benefit and interest. And I agreed with Mark, and I'm happy to say today that 25 years ago I was wrong, Mark was right, and AMEC's role is critical. AMEC now spends over 80% of our budget on providing free educational resources on best practice. We are the only independent voice of how to do measurement in a meaningful and credible manner when there are all these threats at the moment. The biggest threats being all this private equity money that's come into the industry has created loads of salespeople that's commoditizing the price. They're over-promising what their tools do, and they are sort of the proxy educators, if you like. And AMEC stands for actually, no, this is what best practice should look like. So some of the educational resources that AMEC has achieved over the 25 years. Probably the best known is something called the Barcelona Principles. These were first agreed in 2010. AMEC led them, but they were done with a global coalition of PR and communications and evaluation professionals. So it included the PR trade associations that you'll know, the PRSA in America, the PR Council, the CIPR, the PRCA in the UK, and other PR associations all around the world. And they all came together in Barcelona in 2010 and said, can we agree 7 broad principles, or we didn't set out to agree 7, just what are the broad principles that good measurement and evaluation should look like? And they're perhaps most famous because of principle 5, as I call it, which was the first time that advertising value equivalents were stated as being an invalid metric. Now, back in 2010, our research showed that over 80% of the world's communications programs used AVE as some form of component metric within that, within their evaluation. And since the educational resource and focus around this and the explanations about why AVE is not a good metric, that number has fallen right around the world, and is now down, and it's at about 15% of the world's programs have AVE. So it's gone from 80 to 15. Still work to be done. There's still many markets where AVE is a very prevalent metric, but it shouldn't be. And I'm going to talk a bit why next. But before I do, I'm going to talk about some of these other principles just quickly. It talks about the importance of setting goals and objectives and linking the communications goals to the organizational goals. It talks about what we've talked about already today, the importance of moving beyond just outputs, counting the stuff that's generated, the activity-driven metrics, to the outtakes, what people now think, and the outcomes, what do people now do. It talks about not just counting stuff, the what we call the quantitative metrics, but the qualitative metrics as well. So those the more nuanced metrics that you get from content analysis and from market research. Obviously, AVEs, it talks about we need to measure social and digital. And I think very importantly, that measurement should be transparent and replicable and not some sort of black box score that nobody really quite understands. You have to have a measurement approach that's transparent. So on the subject of AVEs, I know that some of your markets, you are under pressure by clients, etc., to use AVEs. Well, I wrote a white paper for AMEC on 22 reasons that AVEs are an invalid metric, and it's available to download. You can see wherever in my deck you see this, by the way, I'll put a link and I'll send the deck to Rob afterwards. That will take you, if you click on it, straight to the resource on AMEC's website. But there's 22 different reasons why AVEs are basically meaningless. Now, it's not easy to move a client away from that metric, so we provide suggestions and support for how you might do it. And it's not a question of a sort of big bang, it's a question of weaning the client off. But I think this white paper will help. The next thing that you need to do if you're going to do meaningful measurement, remember what I said about it, the CIPR, this very senior lady saying to me, our dirty secret is that we don't plan. Well, if you can't plan, if you're not planning properly, you can't possibly measure. So this year's AMEC's educational initiative was all around helping PR and comms pros think, how do we do a meaningful PR and comms plan that isn't just activity based? It's not just we're going to generate this number of press clips and our tactic will be that we're going to do whatever it might be, some sort of media hook or news hook research, or whatever it might be, that the tactics that you like to use. But beyond the tactics, how do we get a plan that shows that our PR and comms work is going to align with the organization's objectives, and how does comms and PR fit within that? So AMEC has produced a load of planning resources and how to link them through to to a meaningful evaluation program. They're hot off the press. I've linked to them at the bottom there. They include a PR planning, what we've called Scribbler. It's a sort of framework that you can design your own plan around. We had help and collaboration from a load of the world's absolute best thinkers in comms on this. So please do go and take a look. And again, you know, some homework, go and take a look. I hope you find that really useful. It is, if you like, that planning component is the bit that really unlocks meaningful measurement. But then people said to us, you know, after with the Barcelona principles, one of the biggest sort of objections, if you like, that people used to talk about was that, well, there is a 30,000-foot view. When you're in an aeroplane, you're looking out of the window and you can see a city beneath you. You can see how to go from the West End to the heart of the city, of the city that you're in. But how do you actually do it on the ground? How do I make this work? You know, how do I take principle and turn it into action? And that's why AMEC came up with the integrated evaluation framework. This is a huge project that I led in 2016. And we said, look, there's some problems here. We've got to help people to understand how to measure across outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. How do you link those things together? But the world of comms and PR's got so much more complicated. People are doing integrated communications. They aren't just doing media relations. They're doing paid, earned, shared, owned, word of mouth, influencers. All of this stuff has got to be factored in as well. So how do you measure an integrated campaign across paid, earned, shared, owned, etc., digital, and then show the link to the objectives, the outputs, the outtakes, and the outcomes? And how do we do this without reinventing wheels? Because we've got to give comms the trust of the C-suite. And the good news is there's something called process evaluation, which businesses and organizations around the world use already. It's a technique that they use to measure the efficiency of things like production lines. So when cars are coming down production lines, you know, they're always being looked at by the organization. How can we make this process work better? How can we save some time, some money, etc. in this production process? It's called process evaluation. And AMEC said, rather than reinventing the wheel, let's take process evaluation and apply it to comms. So this is something that the C-suite already understands. And we created a whole microsite, which is available at this URL. Again, it's linked down here at the bottom left. Where you've got an untold amount of support information. It's been translated into 22 different languages. The framework has been used by over 2,000 organizations. It is globally acknowledged. It's probably my proudest achievement, and it is globally acknowledged as a best practice approach to meaningful communications and evaluation. So go and take a look at it, and it basically looks like this. I quite like this because it's a nice circular sort of rendition of it. If you start, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but if you start at sort of 12 o'clock round this pink area, this is where you begin. If a circle has a beginning, you begin at the top, and you start with understanding the organizational objectives, mapping your comms and PR objectives to that, and making sure that they're aligned. So that's stage one of your preparation. You do that with your client. Stage two is then understanding what do we have? What are the weapons in our armory? What do we know already about where we are? What are our benchmarks? Because we can't measure how well we're doing if we don't know where we are. So this is where we understand about our target audience, our strategy, we create our plan. This is all that first sort of 12 to 5:30 is all the preparation. We then do the work, the implementation, and then we measure in terms of the outputs, the stuff that we generate. Remember that over on the left of the slide, the outtakes and the outcomes, and then we can link that through to the organizational impact. And we have our client at the heart of this. So this is how it looks on AMEC's website in a tabular format. And the reason it looks like this on the site is that you can create your own account, you can log in, you can save all your different clients or different campaigns or whatever it is that you're doing. And you work through, you click it, it's all highly interactive. And each step as you click on it, it pops open new windows and it gives you support information and prompts you in terms of the types of things that you want to be thinking about. And as you work your way through, you create your own measurement plan that goes beyond just square number 4, those output metrics, and takes you through to outtakes and outcomes that are aligned with your client's organizational objectives. And it can help you show your client how you've created some proper impact. So lots of resource. Go and take a look at that. This is how Karma works with our clients. Obviously at Karma, we have a number of experienced professionals like Rabia, who's with me today, who work with our clients to help them tailor and shape their own meaningful measurement framework. So the framework is designed to be a guide that is shaped to each and every organization. So here's an example of the type of thing that we do. Start with the objectives in the gray at the top, map against that the tactics. Then we've listed out different output metrics. Remember we talked about outputs, the stuff. And then what we've done here for this client is we've grouped outtakes, what people now think, and outcomes, what people now do, together, because that worked better for the client. So feel free to do something like that for your client as well. So the AMEC Integrated Evaluation Framework, absolutely fantastic. 22 languages, free. Go and have a good play with it. And I know you'll find it useful, like over 2,000 other organizations do. Very quickly, one of the things that people said to us at AMEC as well was that actually we've done so well on our measurement journey, we're doing a lot better, but how do we compare to our competitors? So we thought about that. We thought we need to come up with some kind of measurement maturity model, if you like. And what this is something, I joke with Rob that we're good at measurement, but not very good at branding. Something that we call the M3, or the measurement maturity mapper, or M3. We're not really quite sure what we call it, but you'll find it here, m3.amecorg.com, the measurement maturity mapper. And what it does is it's a diagnostic questionnaire. It asks you about 50 questions. And it asks you about how well you plan, how well you report, what kind of insights you draw from the reports, and how well you link that measurement to organizational desired outcomes. And it asks you all these questions. It also asks you about you. So what country are you in? What vertical sector are you in? Are you a PR agency? Are you in-house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it then maps your how well you're doing against these different criteria. So how good your reporting is, how good your planning is, and how good the measurement of your impact is. And it gives you an overall score. And what we've got is a made up example, but the colored lines are the results of our survey. The gray lines are the comparative norm that we're comparing against. So you can either compare it against the entire survey, or you can say, I want to go by just people in Brazil, or just people who work in B2B comms, and you can do that. And what I love about it is it doesn't just say, well, look, you're doing quite well on reporting, but you're not doing so well on linking to impact. It produces a cheat sheet for you for free that says, these are the areas you're doing well, these are where you're not doing so well, these are the sort of things that you should be thinking about doing to improve your measurement and your evaluation. It's completely confidential, so although it gives this comparative data, it at no point ever says, this company is doing that. Everything is anonymized and grouped together. And people love it, and I'd highly recommend that you go and take a look at it. So that's the Measurement Maturity Mapper, another free resource for you to use at m3.amecorg.com. So there a number of AMEC free resources which I wanted to highlight to you today. And I also want to talk a little bit about some, people say, well, it's all very well, but if you've got some case studies, how can I see that in action? So there are 2 case studies that our business Karma has done that you're more than welcome to go and take a look at. You can download them at these links here. First of all, the incredible story of the centenarian, 100-year-old gentleman, Captain Tom Moore, who set out to raise £1,000 for the UK NHS by walking around his house 100 times in the first period of lockdown and great uncertainty. and ended up within a month raising over £33 million with a story that went viral. And what Calm has done is it's analysed global content around this story to see what are the PR insights that we can get. And we collaborated with some senior PR professionals on it. And we didn't want to just count the stuff that's easy to count, but measure it in a meaningful way. So we can't be cobbler's children. So, what is the output, the outtake, the outcome? What's the real story behind that? And you can download that case study at karma.com/Captain Tom. And also, the biggest story this year really has been the rollout of the vaccines. And we tracked global coverage for 12 different countries, for 10 different vaccine manufacturers from December, when the vaccines were first announced as having efficacy, through to March, the end of March, which is well into their rollout program. And we looked at how the media was covering the different vaccines, the trust and reputation attributes, and how the leadership was communicating in these different markets. And we linked it through to what did the consumers think and fear and hope for, and how did they then behave? And there's some thrashingly important results in there that really show the impact of the power of communications. So go and take a look at that report. And we actually did a webinar, which is available to watch on demand in conjunction with these organisations, including the UK government head of COVID-19 communications, talking about the findings in that report, and how, because it was so critical in how we moved beyond just counting stuff to actually how it made people think, the outtakes and outcomes. Were people prepared to put the needle in their arm or not? So some final thoughts, conscious of time. I guess sort of, a rallying call to you. First of all, I would say immediate considerations then. Normal doesn't exist. We had normal until a year and a half ago. For the foreseeable future, we don't anymore. And I'm sure you agree with me on that. We can't have a line of sight of anything beyond really 3 months. Any benchmarks that we had in the past are basically irrelevant and meaningless. Things like competitors that brands used to compete against, so many companies have pivoted and gone bust. That's all changed. Any targets that we might have had have changed. Those past performance metrics are therefore sort of out the window. The target audiences that we're trying to influence, their behaviors change. Look at us all sitting at home. Our hopes, our fears, our scares, our concerns have changed. The media that we consume has changed. The trust in organizations, in media, in leaders has peaked and plateaued and changed. And it's changing all the time. And we have to be aware that sort of saying, well, I'm going to research this stuff once a year, or I'm going to rely on data I've got from the past, you're wasting your time. The point here is that we need to accelerate, we need to speed up, we need to be doing work to understand the now, and we need to be realizing that the now is changing, every 12 weeks. So if you're not iterating on your plan and your understanding of your target audiences and what they read, watch and listen to, etc., 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 then you really need to be. And also the velocity, the speed of information and the speed of change. So again, if you're giving your client reports that are just backward looking every quarter, we can't do that. We've got to have real-time information, because so many things change so quickly, but we've got to blend that with meaningful evaluation that allows time for outcomes to actually happen. So some thoughts there. This whole point about being nimble is just so important. I think I've really covered it already, but our plans, our tactics, our strategy, we can't go beyond a 12-week time frame. So we've got to be iterating frequently. We've got to pay more attention now to reputation and trust than ever before. It's basically the only thing that an organization has. There's so many things have been denied to us for a year and a half. We're trialing them again in the UK, but how long it's going to work, that people can go to events in the way that they did. But, sponsorship and outdoor advertising and these type of things that brands use to drive awareness and and shore up reputation and that kind of stuff are not available in large parts of the world. So it's going to be earned the old way, the hard way. And we have to guard it. We've got to make sure that our brand's not appearing alongside inappropriate content. We've got to be making sure that there's nothing going on that could damage the reputation, the trust. We've got to be making sure that we're measuring the reputation and the trust of our brand as well, because these are really the key things that a brand has. We've got to make sure that the brand that we work for really understands its purpose. I think as we come out of the pandemic as well, you know, a lot of people are very much focused on a different world now, a world that feels like it's bitterness because we've treated it so badly. Is a world that needs care, and so you know, the triple bottom line matters more. ESG matters more. How is your client organization operating in that area? Is it walking the walk as well as talking the talk? So I think we need to be thinking about these type of things and monitoring and measuring them with a lot more attention than we did before. And we have to measure better. We can't just outsource the thinking to some software as a service company. Say just because there's a you know, a dashboard and tools and charts, it must be some kind of meaningful measurement. We have to now lean in as PR and comms pros and upskill and take the time to think about this stuff. That I've shown you the all the different resources and the case studies that are available. They're all there for free. That measurement doesn't have to be overly complex. It is about telling a meaningful story. It's about understanding objectives, what it is this organization exists to do. How does comms and PR fit within that? How does it support those organizational objectives? And then, okay, so what's my plan? Let's not just do stuff for the sake of stuff. Let's not do SOS. What is my strategic plan to shore up those comms and organizational objectives? How do my tactics map against that? And then how am I going to measure in a meaningful way? Well, I'm going to do stuff which is going to generate stuff. So I still need to measure those outputs, but I have to move beyond just doing metrics on outputs alone to understanding the outtakes, what people now think, and the outcomes, what people have now done. And if you think of it, keep it simple in your head like that, it's really about telling a meaningful story. And the great news is comms and PR professionals are all experts at telling great stories. So here, you know, a few final sort of tips for success, if you like. Don't rely on automation. Don't listen to the nonsense about how AI is measuring communication so cheaply and meaningfully and effectively. It isn't. It's just counting stuff. AI is years still away from being meaningful measurement in PR and comms on some of these nuanced things that we're talking about. And of course, AI is all focused at just that left side of that slide, the output stuff. Don't confuse beautiful looking charts and amazing dashboards that whiz and spin and change in color with any kind of meaningful information. It could just be chart porn and data puke. Just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it matters. Don't confuse impressions and engagement with knowledge or awareness or affinity or propensity to buy. They're not. Impressions, engagement, these are all output metrics that can be cheated so easily. Over 61% of the world's traffic online, by the way, isn't even a human. Make sure that you have smart objectives and that you work with your client in advance. If you do proper planning with your client, you can say to your client, well, what is a realistic target? What is a relevant objective for PR and comms to support? And any sort of problem that we fear that comes at the end of measurement, certainly the sort of fear that I used to have, goes when we have these conversations up front. And I think I made the other point. So that's really it, where I wanted to say I would obviously love you to stay in touch. I know you, Rob, you've spoken to Rabia. This is me, Karma. I'm the co-managing partner at Karma. I'm the chairman of AMEC, the trade association. There's my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my email, and you are always very, very, very welcome to reach out to me. and ask me questions. You know, chew some fat with me. Always happy to help. So I hope that's been interesting. It's went on a bit longer than I thought it would, but I think we had a few sort of disruptions at the beginning. But Rob, I'll pause and hand back to you there.
No, that's brilliant. First of all, thanks very much from everybody here. I think that was a very useful insight. I don't know if anyone has got any quick questions. You know, probably extend for a couple of minutes if you've got time, and if anyone's got any questions they want to ask.
Well, yeah, I've got a question. And Richard, thanks a lot for the information, and thanks for this comment on the artificial intelligence and the way it measures. Finally, yeah. Have you ever come across with measuring tone of voice for social networks, for commands, for the same campaign across different countries that have different mentalities and communicate themselves differently? So, I mean, if you measure it on the same metrics, or if you give some coefficient, it's still a question, because what has been said in a very polite and positive way in one country, it can just be said directly in the other country, but it will not be negative. That's the way the people communicate. So what's if you have had this, if you had this challenge, what was your good practice in measuring this?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Look, I think, Natalia, and hi, by the way, thanks for your question. I think you're talking specifically about social and digital measurement there, and most companies and tools that measure social and digital content do so using automation. So they use some form of natural language programming to try and cluster topics and cluster words together, and then attribute a sentiment analysis against it. The problem with that is that sentiment analysis always makes mistakes when it's done by a computer. First of all, I mean, we haven't got time to go into the reasons why, but there's inherent bias even built into the algorithm that's written behind it. Natalia's made a very important point that different audiences in different countries, and even within the same country, within different communities, can react to content in different ways. So how best to cope with that? I think the approach that you need to do is to use local market understanding and expertise to look at some of this content and clean it for you and code it for you. That is certainly the approach that we take at Karma. So we don't just have a global algorithm that does this. We've got 18 offices around the world. We have people who speak all these different languages, who live in different countries, who then go in and code it separately. So, for example, Rabia used to work in the UAE for us. Those of you who are aware with some of the politics in the UAE will know that Qatar and Dubai and Saudi were all at sort of loggerheads for a time period. It would be a classic example of countries with populations that would read into things in a different way. And what we're able to do is work with the client, and most clients can't afford to human clean all social content, of course, because the scale's too big. So you take a small sample of it and you clean that up and work on that basis. You work on the people that actually matter within the conversation as well and clean that data up. I think to get the accurate information that you're wanting, that an approach around that is the right one for you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, yeah, human touch again over all the machine things.
Well, we're trying to understand what humans think, right? And I mean, here's a huge problem with social media is I will never tell you the truth on social media about anything. I'll never tell you what I really think. I'll tell you where I will write what I really think, and that's in Google. You know, I'm not going to tell you what I've Googled, but I might have Googled last night, am I going to die of coronavirus? You know, these hopes and fears that people have. How do I become a millionaire? You know, these type of things. I'm not going to put it on Twitter or Facebook. You know, people live their best life on social media, and they project a presentation of what they want you to think about them. So, for example, on Twitter, I only talk about PR and measurement. And I don't lie on Twitter, but I only talk about that. But people who know me know that I have a life outside of PR measurement. And if you're on my Facebook friends, then I'm more likely to give it both barrels, as we say in the UK. But even then, I won't be completely truthful. I'll never talk about Brexit, for example, on Facebook and what I really think about Brexit, because it's such a controversial issue in the country. So, and I know that there's no winners. It doesn't matter what I think. I think different from 52% of the country. That gives you a clue what I think. Anyway, Chris, I think.
Any questions? I don't know if are you all right for sort of 5 minutes or so, Richard? To just carry on?
I'm fine.
Any other questions from anyone?
No, I just wanted to say you've just put a cat amongst my pigeons. I'm just making a switch on my measurement company, and now I've got so many more things to think about now.
Where are you based, Claire?
I measure China.
Okay, well, we have a Asia Pacific office, so if you wanted Rabia to put you in touch with them, then or me too, then happy to do so.
Yeah, I didn't realise I had so much more to think about before I pressed the button. So
well, I think that's it.
But no, it's very useful. It really is.
It's a very difficult thing for me because chairing the trade association, some of our members are these companies that are venture capital backed, software as a service for most businesses that are doing this counting stuff that doesn't really matter approach. But we have to, I'm not saying we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to do that because we have to measure our activity. We have to measure what's happening, but we have to move beyond it to making sure that we're understanding what people think and do. And I mean, the interesting thing is I was prepping for today, I was reading Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry's website, and you're talking about it on the website. And I haven't seen your measurement reports, but you're certainly talking a good game. And it's about how do we bring the talking the good game into delivering a good game. And it isn't so difficult. A lot of people get hung up on, well, how do we disaggregate the actual PR and comms effect from all these other influences that are going on? And the answer to that is it's really difficult. But we can still take an easy to understand approach to it. And I have this conversation with the UK government frequently because I sit on Alex Aitken's Government Evaluation Council. And a lot of them are like, we've got to do econometric modelling and market mix modelling. And I'm like, well, I don't think you do, actually. It's too expensive. And just so we're all on the same page, econometric modelling, what it does very simply is it takes an outcome, whether that's a sales number. Let's imagine it's one of your client's sales. So there's a chart with sales, takes that outcome and it tries to attribute everything that could have influenced those sales against different inputs. And that, if you're Coca-Cola, if it's Coca-Cola sales, it will be sales promotion, it will be PR, it will be advertising, it will be direct mail, it will be the weather, it will be all these different things, supply chain issues, they'll factor it all in. And then they'll try and say, well, look, PR generated this much effect. The problem with it is that it's always wrong. It's always wrong. It's close, but no cigar. And it's also very expensive. So the simpler approach is to tell the good measurement story by saying, well, look, this is what happened. We can see the sales of Coca-Cola went up. Yes, there was some other activity going on at the time, but this is what PR did in those time periods. And you can see here that when we ran this campaign, either nothing happened or something did happen. And if it did happen, great. And if nothing happened, that's also a good learning, frankly, because we know not to do it again and do something different. So that's also not something to fear. You only fear that when you only do your measurement at the end of a campaign and you've spent an untold amount of money on it without realizing that it wasn't working. Much better to have ongoing intelligence that then you can respond to. It's like driving a car, right? That's why we know if we're running out of petrol, why we know if we're going too fast. We respond to it. Why we know if we're going to crash into a tree, we turn the wheel. It's the same thing.
Any final questions, guys? I'm just conscious of everybody's time, and I know a few people have had to leave. No. Okay, I mean, I think that's brilliant, Richard. Thank you. I mean, we've used the integrated framework as well, and it is quite a very useful, practical tool actually for being able to plan and evaluate campaigns. So I would urge you all to have a look at that and to have a play around with it. It's that actually brings a lot of the theory into our day-to-day lives, into the real life jobs that we have to do in the real life campaigns. So it's quite a neat tool, just for sort of framing, you know, how we plan a campaign, how we manage and how we evaluate it.
Yeah, I mean, the people who use it to the best advantage use it basically to do a plan at the beginning. They go through it with their client and create a plan, and then they use it, you know, as an ongoing measurement tool as well, basically.
That's superb. So yeah, we've recorded this as well, and if you can share us the presentation, Richard, I really appreciate your time today. And so obviously everyone will have your details if they've got any follow-up questions for yourself or Rabia after the event. But no, yeah. I appreciate your time today and for taking us through all of that, a whistle-stop tour.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to see you all and meet you, and thank you for your time and listening, and glad it was useful. Good luck with everything.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.